The envelope was heavier than it should have been, a square of ivory with gilded edges. Its delicate shimmer felt like an insult the moment her eyes met the name on the sender's line. It had been years since she'd tried to erase that handwriting from her memory. Years since she'd allowed herself to believe she had finally escaped the weight of him. Yet here it was, a wedding invitation, neatly sealed, as though time had never passed. Her fingers trembled only once before she forced them still. She tore it open and the words danced before her eyes, his daughter's wedding. A celebration he would preside over, smiling with the same arrogance he had once worn when he'd turned his back on her. If you're drawn into this story, make sure to subscribe to our channel for more gripping tales that keep you on edge. Tati. Room seemed smaller with the card in her hand. Memories surged like water through a cracked dam, flooding her carefully built walls. She could see it again, the night she stood waiting, her future wrapped in fragile hope, only to feel it collapse when he denied her, discarded her as though she had been nothing but a mistake. The crowd's whispers, his eyes refusing to meet. Hers, the silence that cut deeper than any blade. It all returned in ruthless detail. He had walked away without hesitation, leaving her stripped of dignity, left to rebuild from ruins. For years, she had carried that night like an invisible scar pressed against her ribs. Now, as the gold letters of the invitation gleamed in the light, the scar burned anew. But what puzzled her more than the cruelty of memory was the intent behind the gesture. Why her? Why, after everything, would his daughter extend this invitation? It was too precise, too deliberate. A bow tied so carefully around an old wound could only mean one thing. There was something more buried beneath the lace and glitter, a message hidden in plain sight. She turned the card over and over in her hands, weighing its silence. Was it pity? A cruel reminder of what she had lost? Or a challenge, a taunt whispered in silk, daring her to step back into their world? Whatever the reason, she knew one truth. Invitations were not always gifts. Sometimes they were traps. And sometimes they were opportunities. When she looked in the mirror later that night, her reflection wore the same composed calm she had trained herself to perfect. No one would guess at the storm building behind her eyes. Her lips were steady, her voice unshaken, her body unbowed. Yet beneath the facade, a cold fire flickered, steady, deliberate, unyielding. She had buried her grief long ago, but pain has a way of fermenting into something sharper when left untouched. Revenge, she realized, did not need to be loud. It only needed to be inevitable. And now, fate had handed her a stage, because that was what this wedding truly was, not just a celebration, but a theater. A place where his pride would stand exposed, where his reputation would be laid bare before his world of friends and allies. The perfect setting for his carefully polished life to be shattered. She could already see it. The glimmering chandeliers, the laughter, the champagne, every element designed for beauty and perfection. And yet, beneath it all, she saw cracks waiting to be split wide open. He had built a fortress of lies and respectability, but she would be the earthquake to bring it down. Her lips curved into the faintest of smiles, sharp as glass. For the first time in years, she did not feel like the abandoned woman of that night. She felt like the one holding the strings. The invitation had not reopened her wound. It had lit the fuse. And this time he would not walk away untouched. She had once believed in the simple, unshakable truth of love, the kind that felt like sunlight warming every corner of the heart. Life before shadows was tender and bright, filled with laughter, spilling over cafe tables, whispered promises in the quiet of evening streets, and the certainty that devotion could endure anything. She was young, hopeful, and entirely surrendered to the man she loved, seeing only the brilliance of his charm, never the darkness it concealed. Every glance, every brush of his hand felt like the universe itself had conspired to make her world perfect, and in that innocence, she allowed herself to dream freely, unaware that the world could turn cruel with a single step. He arrived like a storm wearing silk, irresistibly magnetic, ambitious and restless in a way that both thrilled and unsettled her. His words carried a confidence that promised escape from ordinary life, an intoxicating blend of freedom and promise. He wanted more than comfort, more than affection. He wanted to conquer, to rise without restraint, and he wove her into his vision not as an equal partner, but as a temporary muse, a witness to his ambitions. Every smile, every flirtation with risk, masked a calculating hunger. She mistook intensity for devotion, and in her trust, she never paused to see the cracks beneath his charm. The night that changed everything was quiet at first, unremarkable, until the cruel truth arrived with the weight of inevitability. Pregnant and vulnerable, she felt the betrayal like a cold hand pressed against her chest, suffocating the very hope she had nurtured. He cast her aside, leaving her to face whispers and judgment alone, spinning lies that she had ensnared him, trapping him in a narrative that was entirely fabricated. The man she had adored, the one she had given her heart to, vanished, leaving nothing but deceit and shame. Her world, once vivid with possibility, contracted into darkness, a place where trust had become a weapon wielded against her. Pain, however, has a way of sharpening the spirit. Alone, rejected, and misunderstood, she began the slow, deliberate work of rebuilding. Each small victory, every secured job, every self-contained accomplishment was a stitch in the armor that would one day protect her not only from hurt, but from the weakness of nostalgia. She learned to move through the world with measured grace, concealing the fire within, shaping her life into one of quiet success that required no validation from him. Loneliness became a teacher, heartbreak a crucible, and in the silent hours, she transformed suffering into an unshakable power that others could not touch. Meanwhile, he had created another life elsewhere, rising unchallenged, crafting a legacy that ignored the ruin he left behind. Through another woman, he raised a daughter, giving the impression of fulfillment and moral rectitude, all the while burying the past under layers of convenience and carefully curated charm. He smiled and thrived in his world, never imagining that the echoes of his betrayal had been catalogued and stored, waiting patiently for the moment they would be unleashed. It was his daughter, innocent of the duplicity that had destroyed her mother's heart, who reached out first. Unlike her father, she approached with warmth and curiosity, genuine and unguarded, as though drawn to the woman who had endured a story she could barely imagine. Messages arrived gently, conversations began cautiously, and a bridge formed where one had long ago been burned. There was no malice in the daughter's voice, only the tender hope that connection could exist across generations, untarnished by the sins of the past. Yet beneath the surface of this newfound interaction, the past had never truly slept. Memories of betrayal, the cold abandonment, the whispered lies, and the humiliation carried forward like shadows no light could touch. Years had dulled the sting, but never erased it. Each smile and act of kindness from the daughter stoked a quiet flame, a reminder that one day the balance could be restored. Revenge was no longer a distant thought. It had taken root, patient and precise, awaiting the perfect alignment of opportunity and intent. The catalyst arrived in the form of a wedding card, gilded edges catching the light, her name inscribed with careless elegance. She held it in her hand, feeling the weight of every year of memory pressing against her fingertips. It was not his hand that reached across time. It was hers, the daughter's. But even that gesture became part of the design she had imagined. The stage finally set. The card, seemingly innocent, carried with it the potential to unfold everything he thought he had buried. A single moment, a single invitation, could unearth truths that had been meticulously hidden. And as she set the envelope down, her heart was steady, her mind sharp, and the long wait was over. The first act of her silent reckoning was about to begin. She began with a careful survey, tracing the edges of a life she had once been excluded from, piecing together the fragments that made up the world he had built without her. The daughter's life, seemingly untouched by scandal, revealed subtle patterns of privilege, meticulous control, and inherited vanity. Public accolades, glowing social appearances, and polite conversations all masked the hollowness beneath. The father's emptiness hid behind a meticulously polished facade, a truth easily overlooked by those who only saw charm and charisma. As she connected the dots, each revelation added clarity. The man who had abandoned her thrived not on achievement, but on the illusion of perfection, a veneer that could crack under the weight of truth. Memories surged unbidden, sharpening her. Resolve. She remembered the sleepless nights spent battling nausea and fear, doctor visits that had felt isolating, the whispered reassurances she forced herself to believe while navigating pregnancy alone. She remembered staring at the ceiling, questioning whether she had deserved anything more than abandonment. Against that backdrop of struggle, his life, parade-ready, boastful, untroubled, seemed almost obscene. The contrast burned within her, not as anger alone, but as a fuel for the precision she had learned in years of quiet rebuilding. The pain of the past was no longer just a wound. It had become a lens through which she could see the weaknesses, hidden behind his bravado. She moved through her days with the patience of a predator. Calm, composed, she studied the patterns of his family, cataloging inconsistencies, listening to careless remarks, and noting the unguarded truths that surfaced in casual conversations. Every piece of information, every small contradiction was, stored for later, each one a thread in the web she was weaving. There was no rush, no impulsive act of revenge. Her strategy demanded waiting, observation, and the confidence that the right moment would reveal itself. Meanwhile, he remained blissfully unaware, celebrating the wedding with all the pomp and pride of a man convinced of his invincibility. He spoke freely of his plans, his successes, and the perfection of his life, oblivious to the quiet calculations of the woman he had discarded. His overconfidence became his armor, and, simultaneously, his weakness. In boasting, he inadvertently supplied her with ammunition, each careless word a brushstroke painting the narrative that would later undo him. Her plan began to take shape, delicate and precise, crafted to expose the truths he had hidden so carefully. She envisioned the wedding as a stage, each smile, each toast, each congratulatory handshake a chance to reveal the cracks in his carefully maintained persona. The timing had to be flawless, the revelations undeniable, the humiliation calculated, yet complete. There would be no need for anger or theatrics. The facts themselves would dismantle the illusion he had spent a lifetime constructing. And through it all, she remained a silent storm. Every glance she gave, every word she allowed herself to speak, carried the weight of anticipation. Her final thought, quiet and deliberate, lingered like a shadow at the edge of the celebration. This time, he would not walk away unscathed. This time, she would remain untouched while he crumbled under the weight of the life he thought he had, built with impunity. He would leave broken. The stage was set, the pieces aligned, and the long years of observation and strategy converged in a single inevitable conclusion. She did not need to act yet. She only needed to wait, to watch, and to let the careful architecture of her plan unfold naturally, like the slow, unstoppable gathering of a storm. He approached the wedding with a sense of entitlement, a man convinced that his presence alone would command admiration and erase inconvenient memories. He had slipped in quietly at first, hoping to observe without recognition. Yet the familiar tension in his posture betrayed the desperate need to be seen, to assert, that he still belonged in the narrative of his daughter's life. Every step he took, every polite nod, unknowingly carried him deeper into the careful web that had been spun for years, a trap whose threads he could never see until it was far too late. Meanwhile, she moved with a calm precision, her mind orchestrating every detail in silence. Coordination with the daughter had been meticulous. Every exchange, every subtle hint had been a brick laid toward the inevitable revelation. The groom's family, unwitting participants in his downfall, had been briefed in ways that ensured the truth would strike cleanly and irrevocably. Evidence of his betrayals, emails, documents, and witness accounts long suppressed, now rested ready, poised to emerge at the exact moment when his confidence would be at its peak. She did not need to rush. All that was required was patience and timing, and she had mastered both over years of careful preparation. He moved through the crowd, unaware of the storm gathering around him. His charm, once irresistible and a shield in every circumstance, had become his blindfold. He smiled, shook hands, and traded small talk, believing that charisma could smooth over history and rewrite perception. He did not sense the quiet anticipation, the unseen eyes tracking his every move, nor the deliberate alignment of forces ready to reveal the truth he had long buried. Each gesture, every self-assured laugh was being catalogued, a record of hubris that would make his undoing undeniable. The tension in the room thickened imperceptibly, the air holding a quiet, collective breath. Every glance she directed, every carefully measured interaction, ratcheted the suspense higher, signaling that the moment of reckoning was imminent. The audience, though unaware of the intricate web, felt the subtle vibrations of anticipation. Each step he took toward the gathering became a step closer to exposure, the weight of unspoken truths pressing ever tighter, until even his confidence could no longer conceal the vulnerability beneath the surface. Her mind traced the final outline of the plan with calm certainty. The doors of the wedding hall were no longer just entrances, they were thresholds into consequence. As he crossed them, the spotlight would not simply illuminate him, it would reveal him in the full measure of his deceit. Every carefully hidden act, every abandoned promise, every lie he had told would stand exposed, undeniable and complete. And as she watched, she whispered within herself, steady and unyielding, "Let him walk through those doors. He has no idea the spotlight is waiting." The trap was set, the stage prepared, and the long-awaited justice would unfold with perfect, relentless precision. He stepped into the hall with the confidence of a man convinced that charm could erase history, unaware that every smile, every nod, every gesture was catalogued, analyzed, and waiting to betray him. The daughter moved with subtle authority, orchestrating a moment years in the making, while he basked in his illusion of control. Every interaction he offered, every self-assured laugh was carefully noted, his arrogance making him blind to the eye's gathering storm. She observed silently, a calm anchor in the midst of the performance, letting the world move around her, while the trap she had meticulously laid waited for the perfect instant to spring. The moment came like a sudden crack of lightning. The daughter, poised and unwavering, revealed the hidden truth, her voice carrying a clarity that pierced the haze of pretense. The audience absorbed the confession in stunned silence. Every abandoned promise, every lie that had once left her mother destitute, every claim of innocence he had paraded was exposed without embellishment. The charm he believed would shield him dissolved instantly under the undeniable weight of proof. Faces turned, eyes widened, whispers of shock rippled through the crowd, and the man who had thought himself untouchable felt the first tremors of panic stir within. Through the chaos, she remained composed. There was no dramatic flourish, no angry outburst, only the serene knowledge that her patience and strategy had triumphed. The truth had spoken for her, louder and more decisively than any confrontation ever could. Her victory was silent but absolute. It was the quiet confidence of someone who had endured suffering, learned from it, and now witnessed justice served without compromise. Every glance at the crumbling facade reaffirmed the years of careful planning, the unwavering commitment to timing, and the certainty that the world could now see clearly. He realized, too late, that control had slipped entirely from his grasp. The charm that had once opened doors now mocked him, a hollow echo of a persona built on deception. The room, once obedient to his presence, now turned against him with quiet judgment. Each revelation compounded the humiliation, leaving him vulnerable, isolated, and powerless. The carefully cultivated image of perfection lay in ruins, and the magnitude of his miscalculation became impossible to deny. His arrogance, the very trait that had shielded him for decades, became the instrument of his undoing. The life he had, projected with such meticulous care, collapsed into fragments of exposure, every deceit revealed for all to see. The man who had once walked through life unchallenged now faced the weight of accountability, stripped of influence, charm, and pretense. The consequences of his actions, long buried beneath pride and duplicity, descended with a precision that was both inevitable and deserved. She allowed herself one final, unspoken thought, a quiet affirmation of years reclaimed. For years, he made me invisible. Now the whole world could see him for what he really was. In that silence, there was triumph, a complete and irrevocable justice that needed no words, no applause, only the enduring satisfaction of a life righted and a betrayal fully avenged. The remnants of his carefully constructed life lay in disarray, every facade stripped away by truths he had long ignored. Friends turned away with subtle looks of disappointment. Colleagues whispered behind his back, and the social circles that once welcomed him now held their distance. His charm, which had so often shielded him, now seemed absurd in its effort to mask a reputation fractured beyond repair. Isolation settled around him like a cold cloak, a quiet reminder that the years of manipulation, lies, and abandonment had finally caught up. Each attempt to regain control only highlighted the depth of his miscalculation, leaving him powerless and exposed to the consequences he had long evaded. In contrast, she moved forward with a grace born of endurance and careful strategy. The Yao, daughter, once hesitant, now sought her presence, drawn not by obligation, but by respect and genuine curiosity. Together, they shared conversations once impossible, moments of laughter and reflection, and a bond cemented in honesty and understanding. Every achievement she pursued, every quiet success she celebrated, felt amplified by the knowledge that her strength had been forged through fire. She thrived not in the ruin of another, but in the integrity of her own choices, building a life rich in substance rather than illusion. Meanwhile, the man who had once wielded power as if it were his birthright discovered the bitter taste of impotence. Doors closed where they had opened easily, voices of influence now carried dismissive tones, and the isolation became a mirror to the emptiness of his ambition. Each failed attempt to regain authority only underscored the reversal of fortunes, the karmic justice that unfolded with an inevitability he had refused to believe. The world that once bent to his convenience now witnessed his disempowerment, a silent testament to the enduring consequences of his past betrayals. She allowed herself a final, quiet reflection as the balance of life settled. He abandoned me when I was carrying life. Now, life itself had abandoned him, and I didn't have to lift a finger. In those words rested the ultimate triumph. Justice served not with vengeance, but with the dignity of patience, strategy, and unwavering resolve. The past no longer haunted her, and the future, unshackled and bright, awaited her with promise and peace.